I think there's tremendous benefit for companies like ours to pursue the fellowship of firearms.
Welcome to Gun Owners of America's State of the Second podcast. I'm Kailey.
And I'm John, and today we're joined by two patriots, Bob Faxon and Dustin Wallace from Faxon Firearms. Guys, thank you for making the trip down here. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure.
So we'll go into our first segment that is rapid fire. We're going to ask you guys 5 questions. You answer them as quickly or slowly as you want. This is just a fun kind of quick response. So the first question I have for you all is...
Who goes first? I need to know.
We'll go.
Is it
Bob,
here, me?
Bob first.
Okay,
You're more important. You know.
I don't know about that.
I don't.
But I'll take it. Okay.
I'm here for moral support. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, Bob, because this is a Bob question, but Dustin, you can answer. What is your favorite manufacturing process?
Integrex, multi-axis, mill turns. Was that too nerdy?
No, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah. Also, Integrex multi-axis mill turns. Yeah. That's the new hotness on our floor. So, yeah.
If you could go back in time and change history, what are you changing?
I would have served. That would be my one change.
If I would have gone back in time and changed history, I'll double down. I'll get into a vortex. You know, the Back to the Future trilogy?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have gone back and totally cut Back to the Future 2. That was garbage. It goes 1, 3, 2.
That's
is a
really an
distant
answer.
third.
Is that?
Yeah, I would go back in time and I would tell Rob Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg, like, nah, redraft that.
That
shouldn't have happened.
completely?
I would, or at least redo it. I think it was lame. It was a little comic booky.
I mean, three
my taste.
was perfect.
Yeah, they're out west. They turn a freight train into a time machine. That's great. That's excellent cinema.
Good. We've lost half our audience.
Yeah,
now.
there we go. What is your go-to home defense gun?
You know, I obviously like a pistol, and believe it or not, 12 gauge. I like 12 gauge, and of course, keep an ARAC. So I'm biased on that. Actually, not just one, really. That would be too difficult of an answer.
Yeah. Generally, it's a handgun. I mean, when I know, like growing up, like it was always shotguns in the house. Like shotguns was always the home defense weapon. But generally, for me, it's a pistol. Yeah.
Because it depends, like home, farm, different places, different things, different thoughts.
Yeah. What's your last impulse buy?
Oh, geez.
Integrex.
That's
That's actually true.
last impulse buy. Tickets to opening day
Oh, Red's opening day
is Thursday.
Is
And
like
so, yeah.
a tradition. They're the first ones to open the season.
They used to. They took that away from them a couple of years ago, which kind of stinks because obviously the first professional, baseball team. But yeah, I've never been. But my wife grew up in Cincinnati, and she's always gone. Said we should go, and so I've had to pay some scalper prices for tickets because they were already sold out. So,
All right. So I'm being told that I need to ask something funny. So I used to work at Faxon. I've said it multiple times. What is a funny story you can tell about John at Faxon?
dude, I asked earlier. There were some pre-flight notes that I wanted to get going. John had something that we called the leg flu. And I don't know really what it was. I think it was mostly that we had just gotten back from SHOT Show 2020, right? And of course, everybody's getting sick, and a certain amount of people are testing positive for COVID or whatever. And something with your immune system was like, you know what? I'm gonna attack your joints. So poor Johnny boy coming into my office with a cane. He rocked it though.
I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks. It was so bad.
And so it comes up every once in a while. You're eating lunch. Hey, remember when John had the leg flu? Yeah, that was sweet. Yeah. So the John Farner leg flu stuck in the old cranium.
You got one, Bob?
Mine tags onto that. I don't think I've ever told you this, but you remember I drove you home that night. You couldn't drive your car.
Yes.
I thought it was pathetic. I thought you could have driven your car. It's like, drive the freaking car. But we drove you home because you couldn't drive the car because you had your leg and canes and stuff. And so we drove him home. But the whole way I'm going, you could have driven. I could have driven.
I could have driven.
You could have driven.
Your amazing wife told me I wasn't allowed to drive and that you were driving me home.
Yeah, she walked him into my office.
All right, so blame it on her.
Yeah.
So when I get back, I'll let her know.
Yeah.
No, that was funny. It was
Do
good
what you
times.
gotta do.
Good times.
I also was driving a stick shift at that time, in my defense. So there
In
was
his
that.
defense.
In my defense. Well, that is rapid fire questions. Kailey, like most Americans, you have a savings account, right?
I do.
Do you have an ammo savings account?
I also do.
And is that through Ammo²?
It is, and I've had it for over 2 years.
Ammo² is the only website where you can purchase ammo a little bit at a time and then get it shipped directly to your door.
Absolutely. I have a little bit of money that goes in every month, and then I can divide what percentage of that money is used for what calibers of ammo. And then all of a sudden, I hit 1,000 rounds and it gets shipped to my door.
Well, what if I don't want one of the 70 calibers they have available?
You get to pick and choose, and you can even adjust the mounts so that you can hit your target goals faster.
Well, what if I don't want that ammo anymore? Can I switch it? Can I get my money back?
Yes, it's really easy. And I always like to see the graph fill up at the end of every month.
So where do I go to get such an awesome service?
Go to ammo².com.
Get it now. Start your ammo savings account at ammo².com. Bob, I've known the story since I started at Faxon. Go ahead and let the people know how the story goes, how Faxon started. It's one of my favorite stories. And then go ahead and dive into the ARAC too.
Okay. Well, the ARAC is so intertwined with why it started or how the company started. Obviously, our manufacturing goes back to when my brother and I were 13 and 15 years old, working for our older brother at the time. And so our machining pedigree goes way back. But when around the time 12, 13 years ago, there wasn't a lot of work for manufacturers and we were having trouble finding work. So our goal was to find a product. And of course, AR-15s was pretty common for manufacturers to divert into manufacturing rifles. So we wanted to follow that path. But when I went to Las Vegas for the SHOT Show, which is the first time I'd ever been there, probably about 15 years ago now, 15, 16 years, I didn't understand the magnitude of the industry. And I went out there with maybe a very overinflated ego thinking, hey, we can dominate this. But when I saw the show and the different manufacturers, I was incredibly humbled. And I realized that the quality of a lot of the products was so good. And for us to try to enter the industry at that point, I didn't think we could pierce it. I thought it would be a very difficult challenge. So we backed off that effort. About 6 months later, I was watching Discovery Channel with my two boys at the time, and they were doing the all-time top 10 battle rifles. And of that, after the commercial break, was the AR and the AK. And of course, the AK was rated #1 in that show. And for various reasons that were hard to really argue in certain cases. So I got very upset because in our business at that time, we were working with defense and weapon systems. And I said, we've never sat in a room trying to develop the second best anything for the warfighter. So I got mad, sat at the kitchen table, and 20 minutes later, I drew up the ARAC. And the ARAC was the way that we could potentially pierce into the firearms industry. And our company is really based on innovation, quality, and service, but innovation specifically. And so the ARAC was an opportunity to objectively take beneficial components of the AK and the AR, put them together into an upper receiver that would fit on any AR-15 lower. So the challenge was to create the best of both. And so the ARAC was the way that we started the company. And then, of course, when we made the gun, the upper, one of the things I've always been an advocate of is vertically integrated and internally manufacturing components. I'm not a big outsource person. So making the ARAC, we had to learn how to make barrels. So barrels was a byproduct of building an ARAC upper. And then as it turned out, the barrels became very popular and became a dominant part of the business over time. So right now we're actually diverting back. And as of last August, I'm now back running firearms. So there for a while I was in our other business that we do other things in. And I was away from firearms for a little bit. So I'm back there now and expect to help the team. So my goal now is not to actually go back and be the lead of the company, but to help the people who run the company and hopefully use some of my experience, if it helps, to get them into a position where they do a great job of running a company. And when I went back, they were joking and said, what is your goal? Because typically I'm a very growth-oriented, corporate kind of driver. And that usually is just numbers. But in this case, going back after the few years I've been away, I said, the only really goal I have now is we're going to make this a great company. That's it. Size, revenue, all of those things are byproducts, but we're going to focus on the team, the people, and making a great company. And we're going to really emphasize the innovation, which over the past few years, I think we maybe didn't put enough energy and effort into that I think we should have. So started out by just going to the ARs, realized that wasn't a path, watched the TV show, got upset, drew up a new gun in 20 minutes. We were shooting it within a year. That got us into the firearms business. And then from there, we've expanded in various ways.
Yeah. And some of the products that you've really brought in that are innovative, you've got the muzzlelock device and then the integrated comp barrels, the 14.5 to 16 comp barrel or muzzle device barrels. Sorry, not comp. Those were some of my favorite products. And then the pencil barrels, that too. You know, a lot of people had tried to do that, and you guys have succeeded on making one of the best pencil barrels that have hit the market ever.
You know, that was the technical side of things. We identify in the industry, I would say our pedigree is we're not as much gun people as some other companies may be. But what we do have is a very strong manufacturing background, very strong. So we've made parts that are on Mars. We've made them on the ocean floor, defense, missiles, you name it. So manufacturing is a pretty good strength of ours. But what was interesting is the stress relieving process is probably key. And we do that in-house. As I mentioned, we're very big on vertical integration. So developing the recipe or the thermal process for the stress relieving is a major factor for a pencil barrel not stringing. Physics and size, the barrel's going to grow, the group's going to grow. That's going to happen. It's physics. Physics never runs out of batteries, I always tell people. But as far as having it go off point of aim and to string, that's something we think we can mitigate through stress relieving. And so far, it seems to be very effective.
Yeah, and the other thing that, you know, I remember coming in when I first started, you know, cold hammer forge was a big thing. You know, cut rifling was a big thing. You guys decided to go to button rifling. You know, what made you guys go that route as well? Because that in itself was not as common as it is now today.
Well, you know, at the beginning, capital investment of a GFM barrel is much higher. We had a piece of equipment that we had converted over to do what we would call a very good job in the button rifling. And when we developed the stress relieving processes, which is probably the only handicap that you really see in button rifling, I think that worked out very well. So we actually are playing with some other things right now. But, you know, button rifling can be very effective. And what I would say is when you talk about good and bad of different processes, you know, a good button rifle can beat a bad other process in certain cases, right? So if it's done right, I think it's a very good process.
Yeah, and I do think some people forget too that button rifling is, you know, a cold forging style process, right? You're not.
It's a cold working process.
Yeah, it's a cold working process, and you know, you're not, you know, cutting away material like you know, single point cut rifling. Obviously, it's not cold hammer forging, and in some regards, cold hammer forging can be a more economical stance. But it's the machining, the machine that it takes to do that work, you know, it is very different. But also do like that machine you talked about that they first converted to do rifling. Having that machine at our disposal also helped us, you know, do the 1 and 3 twist for 8.6 blackout and do all those things because it has capabilities beyond being a rifling machine, right? So now we know how to do those in more modern machines as well, but it also becomes like a nice test bed for, you know, more boutique items and things of that variety. So, yeah. And by the time you put through all the air gauging, by the time you put through all the other quality checks that we do, the CMMs, the Mars shafts, all that sort of stuff, you know, a good barrel is a good barrel. And John, you could attest to this. We have no pro shooters at the shop. You know what I mean? Like, so when we go out and test and you go, if Dustin could hit, you know, sub MOA at 300 yards, and maybe this is okay. You know, those are some of the things that I think too that are helpful. It's not like we're hiring in snipers, you know, from the Marines to come in and test the product. It's your general guy, you know, your enthusiast, you know, can you make that sing?
You have to remember too, the rifling process is very important, but it's only one piece of the barrel. So when you look at how you process that barrel, how you turn it, how you chamber it, the way you stress relieve it, things that you do to that barrel other than just the rifling are just as critical. So when we talk about a product, it takes everything to make it right. It only takes one thing to make it wrong. So there's a lot of other components to coming up with what we think is a quality barrel, or in this case, maybe rolling a barrel into a rifle or a firearm.
I can attest that they have no pro shooters. There is a video of me out there shooting that Dustin took. A very goofy video, but
we have
was a fun time.
Plenty
but
of
I would
artifacts.
like to point out that cameraman did survive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that was a funny story I could have told. You remember you blew up one of the cameras. That was a good one.
I
It was
did.
After,
I did blow up one of the cameras.
We were shooting rimfire content, but then we decided to switch to a 7.62 ARAC. Didn't really think about that, and it was on a little stand, and it just enough energy made it go.
Yeah.
So you didn't actually dart the camera. But
Yeah,
it was,
I brought that invoice with me.
yeah, that
Is the
6-year-old DJI.
Is the statute of limitation not up on that yet?
It was good times.
So you've talked a lot about, the people and the process and obviously, we're all big fans of your product. But as you continue to grow as a company and as the political landscape seems to be changing, as we see more and more new gun owners join the Second Amendment community, what do you guys see as kind of next on the horizon?
Well, you can talk about suppressors. That would be a good thing.
Yeah. At SHOT Show this year, we announced our new suppressor lineup. That's a shift that, I think the whole industry has seen in the last probably 3-4 years. You could probably stretch back further, but with the time, like I know when I first started at Faxon, there were guys that were like, I ordered this suppressor and in 3 to 34 months, I'll get my paperwork and I'll be, on the road and ready to go. But the turnaround times for the paperwork and the processing, and then all the companies like your Silencer Centrals, your Silencer Shops that are really taking a bespoke and white glove approach to people being able to get these products quicker and not feel worried about, did I miss something? Did I do this thing wrong? Where do I get fingerprint cards? All that sort of stuff. So kind of taking out those barriers to entry, and then also too, just like the turnaround time, to actually get the product in hand. Because I think that's what turns some people off. One is knowing there's still a lot of people who think they're illegal everywhere all the time. I think so. That's one thing. And I know there's a lot of outlets that are educating people on that. And I think the second one is like, well, how do I do it and how do I do it properly? And I feel like there's a lot more resources, for that right now. But, we see it as in everything that we do, we want people to feel like they're getting more than what they paid for, right? We're always a high value proposition brand in all of our products, that they're getting something that's lifetime guarantee, that's a made in the US. You could point it on the map and say there's Faxon Firearms in Cincinnati, right? And the same thing goes for the suppressors. And I think that that'll be a change in our, business, because this will be a different business segment for us, somewhere where we haven't played. But I think a lot more people have a lot more interest in it, and they're building their ARs, they're building up the guns because they want to be able to shoot suppressed. And so I think that's been a big change. Now I know that I think there was stuff this week, right, that came out about saying, is the ATF going to continue recognizing suppressors as firearms and vice versa? So, you never really know. Everybody kind of thought that we knew what the shakedown was on pistol braces 2 years ago, and then that all changed and then changed back again. So those are things you can't necessarily count on, except for the fact that they're likely going to change, depending on what the cultural impulse is at the moment. But I think that it is something, very cool that more people are getting interested in, and that there's, other companies, including ourselves, that are bringing unique offerings to it. This isn't just your solvent trap, can. There's some really high science going on in there. And in our case, a bunch of intellectual property and stuff that's going into it that I think is super unique. And I think just making the industry more rich, making the shooting sports more rich.
Yeah. At SHOT Show, I got to see the cans firsthand, and I looked at them and I was like, this is insane. And I heard, I'm not going to out you guys on where you got engineers from it, but I've heard the technology that's going into this is something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, a lot of these ideas came, internally. Now we reached out to do, to get some help on the actual 3D printing. We have basically 4 families of suppressor. There's 2 that are traditionally manufactured that just happen at our facility, and then 2 that are 3D printed out at Inconel. And but obviously with Bob's background and the defense side of the world, and kind of knowing what these materials are capable of and which ones would be, good to run down a path and which ones may not fit, and also finding where is that missing piece, in the market. So if we're talking about back pressure or cooling or Venturi effects or how they mount. There's all these little ancillary parts, that go along with it. But yeah, it's all very fascinating. I mean, do you want to talk? I would love for you to talk a little bit about, the tri-lobe design and how we're some of the unique features that are going to be in that.
It's fun when you go about trying to design or create something. And usually what I like to do is start at a very high level and look at certain basic elements, right? And then as the evolution occurs, you can refine the details of the components. So, for example, in the Basilisk, I hate that name, but Basilisk.
We'll get there in a second.
Yeah, but anyway. So the Basilisk
Harry Potter fans
is
like
three-sided. But what we wanted to do initially was to create a different profile so that you had more cross-sectional area per linear inch of suppressor. So again, physics is always physics, right? Never changes. So volume is a component of a suppressor. And being able to increase the volume without increasing the length and impeding the line of sight or getting up close to that line of sight really lend itself initially. And this is one of the things we put down a list of things that we wanted our suppressor to be able to do or to be capable of. And volume, of course, one, the sides. We didn't want to go up above the sight line and into that. We wanted to increase the cross-section per linear inch. We wanted multiple chambers and passages. We have some cooling features that we're still testing and working through. But there was a lot of high-level things. And then to actually define the product, there was software utilized for flow. And then we used a physical flow bench where we benchmarked industry, took ours for back pressure through flow, and then we took it to the field and used sound equipment to test the decibel. So the effectiveness, it's great taste or less filling. You're usually balancing one against the other. So one of the major issues for our suppressors was to reduce back pressure. But yeah, that typically will increase noise. So the technology that was inside of there was developed through software. It was simulated in plastic on a flow bench to validate some of the parameters. And we could do that every 2 days to 3 days and run an iteration. And then when you got to a point where you wanted to test it, you could print it in Inconel or metal, right? You'd make an actual shootable one. And then you could take that back pressure, the through flow, and then actually go out and do decibel and compare that. So the rate of development was rapid. It was every 2-3 days was another revelation or revision of the design. So that was kind of interesting. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to lose track of the initial things. You want this to be the objectives that you set, like a threshold objective or a goal, right? So you set what you want it to do, then you leave those alone and you tweak the balance to make that happen. And that's where the smart people come into play. And that's where software and iterations and testing and validation come in. So I think we went through a pretty extensive, it was a very short term, very quick pace, but there was a tremendous amount of evolutions or revisions within that.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the stuff they'd bring in, they'd be like, hey, we have suppressor parts today. We're like, cool. Well, I bring them into the office. I'm like, what in the world is that? Because it looks so crazy. But, there's stuff that you can do. Like, Bob had mentioned some of the new machines we're getting on the floor, even for the traditionally manufactured stuff. Typical cup and tube design suppressors, right? Your normal baffle stacks, like to be able to rapid prototype those. Yeah. Being able to what would take, a couple of weeks to get maybe an iteration or two done. We have trays of them by the time lunch is over. Those types of things are, huge. I think the agility in this market is such a big thing because everybody's innovating. You know what I mean? Anybody's paying attention to is innovating, and they're trying to make something unique under the sun. And so we want to try to make sure that we continue that as part of our trademark and the quality, innovation, and service. There has to be that innovative piece. And I think right now, a lot of that is how quick could you come to market with something that is still of the quality pedigree. That goes with your brand.
When you talk about product development or evolution of your current product line, it's always a constraint of resources, right? So when you can facilitate a shop with equipment and technology that allows a lesser amount of investment and time to create or to improve something, then by definition, you could do more within a year. So when the background in manufacturing, like I said, is fairly extensive, and other aspects that I've been involved with, we literally look at and try to factor in what will be the factory of the future. How will you deal with labor issues? How will you deal with tolerances and not add cost? And how can you rapidly develop prototypes? How can you reduce the cost, the time, and the resources necessary to get something to market? And that is where I have spent the last several years aggressively involved in. And now, back being involved with firearms, we're taking a very aggressive approach there to utilize those type of concepts to be able to bring products not just quicker, but actually better and quicker, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a fun puzzle to play, actually. And there's a lot of capabilities out there today that you can leverage for those results. So that to me is one of the funnest parts of the business, is trying to really be great at what you center of excellence, a core competence. What I try to echo through the building. We want to be a center of excellence at our core competence, and our core competence is manufacturing. You can define it into firearms, but it doesn't even need to be. So, that's what we're striving for.
So I got a fun story, and it goes into a question. So I know aftermarket barrels for pistols and rifles are a big thing, and I know before I left, we had a big meeting on going into what aftermarket barrels we should do next. I know I said high point barrels. Dustin looked at me like I had four heads and laughed me off the
it'd be a great marketing activity.
Great marketing activity, but didn't work. But yeah, what goes into the decision to make any of the aftermarket barrels you do? I know you guys do Shield, M&P, Glock, SIG.
Yep.
I'm missing one, I feel like.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's Glock, SIG, and M&P, compact and subcompact. Now, granted, we've had OEM clients, that reach beyond that. And, that's another thing when, Bob talks about our manufacturing pedigree. There's a lot of stuff that we do and are able to do or have done in the past or are spooling up to do in the future that never really hits the Faxon catalog, right? So, there's a lot of parts and pieces that, some folks, may not even know, that which in white label OEM manufacturing, they shouldn't, right? Now, there's been a lot more people that are more open with it. Bob's son, Robert, works with me in sales and marketing. And one of our kind of credos is that in the barrel space, we want to be like, if you're a car person, like the Brembo brakes of rifle barrels. So we do have some people that are very open about saying that our products and their firearms. So, for example, if you're talking about pistol barrels, Bruce Gray of Gray Guns, we do those, 320 barrels. He basically builds them like 1911s, right, to these crazy, crazy tolerances and kind of this custom feel. But yeah, we do all those. There's we've dipped in 1911 a little bit. We've done a few other things, but what we generally do is we try to listen to the customers and the dealers. What is the greatest interest? Where is there a void in the market? And so the shield barrels were an excellent point, because when we came out with our shield barrels, we were one of the first, companies to offer a threaded shield barrel. All right. So you're just taking an opportunity and putting yourself right there in the thick of it. Obviously handguns have a lot of proliferation, right? So there are certain things to keep in mind with it, but those are generally what we're looking at. Every year we do year-end surveys with all the dealers and try to find some gaps. We do a lot of customer surveys as well, take in feedback from reps. And, every once in a while we'll get a customer who, the reason we have Glock like conversion barrels, like Glock 22 conversion barrels, is because we had a customer who was like, dude, if you would just make these, like, we'd sell at least a few hundred of them, in a couple of months. So like, well, okay, if you want to sign up and do that, and then if we see it's valid, then we'll add it, to the formal catalog, or we give the dealer the opportunity to have a certain amount of time of exclusivity on the product if it's something that they want to shake out and we want to shake out. So there's a few things that go into it, and sometimes it's requests from other people in the industry. So, this goes beyond pistol barrels, but, like we're a partner with Hornady on 338 ARC. Obviously, we wouldn't know what 338 ARC is, but when somebody comes to market with a new cartridge and they want to make sure that it's supported throughout the industry, sometimes it's just hey, we're doing this cool new thing. Do you want to be a part of it? And how those processes and what the engineering looks like, it all depends what company's coming to you. But sometimes you never know. You don't know. Is this one going to be a ringer or a dinger? Like you really don't know. But yeah, a lot of that is industry feedback, stuff that we do on OEM that we think we could maybe take another spin on and put it in our own catalog. And then a lot of feedback from the dealers and reps.
Well, before I forget, Bob, congratulations. I saw Robert got engaged.
He did.
Congrats,
He did.
Robert.
Just
If you're
this week.
watching this, congrats, buddy.
We're very excited.
Super
Yeah.
excited for you
We
guys.
love her to death. She's awesome. They've been dating since they were 14.
Yeah.
So
And they're 15 now, so it's been a hell of a year.
we're super excited.
I'm excited for you guys.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
If you let him know I said congratulations
I will.
as well. Are you looking for a quality pistol at affordable price? Check out Derya Arms. Me personally, I own 2 different models from Derya Arms, the DY9 and the Malik, both high quality guns coming out of one of the largest manufacturers out of Turkey who has just moved their facility here to the US, making USA made guns that are high quality and ready for any situation. Their DY9 is one of the best shooting guns I've shot in a long time, and their Malik copies the Beretta 92 pattern of guns. Check them out at DeryaArms.com or check them out at Goals in Knoxville, August 9th and 10th.
This segment is from the Soapbox, the part of the show where we handle the spiciest of topics and discuss some of the pain points in the industry, the pain points in legislation, and what it takes to overcome those. So, who wants to kick it off with a hot take?
I'll start because I think it's one that we probably, with you guys having like a marketing, focus in your roles, sometimes just the marketing end, right, of firearms. And it is a catch-22. For example, the biggest elephant to point to in the room is like Google ads kind of run the world and the rest of consumer products, right? But obviously gun companies can't do that. Now there are workarounds and there are other agencies and there are other PPC type platforms that you could use, but you can't use Google AdWords. Now at the same time, that also becomes a playing field leveler. Well, if I can't do it and that guy can't do it, well, now we're both having to get scrappy, so, organic SEO and things like that, more traditional web-based marketing is still at play for a company like us. Whereas on a consumer side and something that's not, regulated by a 3-letter agency, it's how big is your budget, right? So your ROI is directly tied to your budget. Whereas I think there is some more creativity there. I'll say sometimes one of my biggest challenges, though, is like the inconsistencies between the social platforms. That's probably one of my biggest soapbox things, where it'll be like, I posted the same thing there and the same thing there. But here you said it was not allowed, but here it was just fine. Those things always, but it's a cross section, right? Because these are private industries and we do believe in private industry. And so it is a catch-22. But it does make you get more creative, I would say. So finding partner organizations and other marketing outlets and people like Forge Relations or whomever else that help you combine with other folks. And so you do have to get scrappy. But I would say from a day-to-day, that's normally one that, when I wake up and I get a notification on my phone like, hey, we took that down. And then we decided to take all 43 of these down that were fine for the last 6 months. So that is a frustrating piece for us, especially when we're a valid business. We're well within the terms and conditions. And sometimes it's not even the platform. Sometimes you get brigaded. Sometimes you get people trying to ransom your account. But with bigger growth and bigger audiences and bigger notoriety, the more you become a target to those types of things. So I wouldn't say it's just limited to firearms. I'm sure there's other businesses and things that deal with it, but that's generally one of the headaches that I just do not like dealing with.
What was it? Like a year ago, you guys got your whole account taken?
Yeah. Instagram. We're back.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
They're back.
Facebook's still in jail. It has been for a little while. I get glimpses of light and, we work with people who know people and work through, other organizations, such as yourselves that have people on the inside and could give insight, to getting those things fixed because 99% of the time, it's nothing that was actually against the terms and conditions. You know, there's nobody in our facility that's trying to do anything slimy. You know, we understand, listen, this is a platform that you and other business owns. And if we need to play by your rules, we play by your rules, but don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater because, you know, we make guns.
Yeah. I don't really feel that easy about it. It kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And the fact that people can treat us the way they do, being a firearms company, when really, if you really go back, that's what gave them the freedom that they're using today to penalize us. Under one of my desks, under the glass, I did the artwork on this, by the way, but I have a picture of an ARAC and a Constitution. I said, both of these defend our freedom and both of these defend each other. And I think about that, and I from commerce, finance, credit cards, banks, advertising is a group of it, but it goes much deeper. And you know, when I was a kid, you watched cowboy and Indian movies. John Wayne took Iwo Jima. I mean, there was nothing bad about firearms. I don't know why firearms are bad now. Firearms have not changed. They weren't bad then. They aren't bad now. But you're treated as a second-class company because you manufacture firearms. And I personally, I have an issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel your pain, but more importantly, I think the frustration comes where they want to be a publisher, but not have any of the responsibility of a publisher. They're like, we're an open forum, and anyone can post anything except for when I don't politically align with it. And then I'm going to put a separate clause. And I think this is one of the things that's the hardest for us to message in the 2A space is you have a Second Amendment right, whether you choose to use it or not. I think people have so, especially on the anti-gun side, so disillusioned themselves with this fact that, well, I'm just going to take away your gun rights because I don't want a gun, or I believe that, you know, the police are always going to be there and there's never going to be, they're going to be 20 seconds away when I need them, or 5 seconds away. They have teleportation devices, and like none of that's true. It's like they're minutes away when seconds matter. And so you have to have the ability to defend yourself. You have a constitutionally protected right to be able to defend yourself and your family, but they don't recognize that they themselves even have that right. It's all, that object scares me. And so I want it to disappear. And that's just not reality. And so it's incumbent upon us on the pro 2A side to educate, to, you know, take away, you know, we all saw what happened with the Alec Baldwin shooting, where it was the gun's fault. No, it was his fault. He pulled the trigger. They want to say things, you know, like, well, this mass shooting. Well, no, it's a mass murder. The gun is what you're focused on, but it was somebody who is evil that is doing evil intent. And that's the differentiating factor is they want to put all of the ire on the gun and none of it on the individual, when we all know that the first step in gun ownership is taking personal responsibility for that firearm.
Well, if there was any logic to it, if you look at the statistics and take away suicides, and you take away rifle homicides, and you take pistol homicides, why aren't they trying to take all the pistols away? If they want to keep us safe, then you should be saying take all the pistols, not the ugly black rifles. They're not statistically the problem. So I don't understand the logic of it. I don't understand the meaning of it. I think it's simpler to point to a piece of metal and say that's the problem, instead of a more challenging question of where is the mental health of the people that are doing this? Why is there so much, when kids used to take a rifle and put it in a gun rack in a pickup truck and drive to school, and they never had the issues? So I think, unfortunately, if you don't focus on the core of the problem, you may feel better, but you're not going to fix it. And the other thing is, we're a gun manufacturer, right? And I should say everybody should own a gun, and I don't. And I don't know if this is an unpopular statement, but I think if you want to, and you're going to practice, and you're going to be responsible, you should have as many as you want. I think that right has to be there for people. And I don't push that everyone should have one. Some people probably aren't comfortable, and maybe they shouldn't actually have a firearm, but I hope someone around them, if they need them, does have a firearm. And I hope they practice and train with it, and they're responsible with it. But the other side says, I don't want one, so I don't want you to have one either. And that really crosses a line to me. That's not the same thing. If you choose not to have it, I respect that. But if you're telling me I can't have it, I really have an issue with that. And that's why I just don't see the argument isn't logical to me at all. And it doesn't really, if you want people to be safer, which all of us do, I think you have to look at the core problem, not do something that's superficial that makes you feel better, but really is not ever going to fix the problem. And if you think the criminals are going to hand in their guns, I think that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. So I just can't follow the logic of it. I mean, if this was a perfect world and we could all be totally safe and no one would ever get hurt, if everyone turned into fire, I might even consider it. I don't know if I'd do it, but I would consider if it could be a perfect world. But that's not the question, and that doesn't exist. So it's not even close to having that kind of a debate. And to me, it's just, I don't know why people feel that way. I really don't. I try to really understand both sides of arguments. Most of the time, honestly, there are questions out there today. It's debatable who's correct. But on the Second Amendment issue, I think with our history, our country's heritage and pedigree, I don't know that that's really a valid argument in that case. I don't know why people are saying some of the things they do. And to treat us as a second-class company because of it, it's pretty upsetting, to be honest with you. It's just not fair. Other people do things that, in my opinion, would be worse. And they're not treated as bad as we are.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a very valid point.
Don't look at me. I got a cough. Hey, water.
Somebody tell a joke before I get really pissed off.
No, Bob, I want you
all you
pissed
gotta
off. It's
do,
great.
all you got to do is just put wood furniture on the AR, man. That seems
Wood furniture on the
that seems to trick everybody. I can't remember that. I don't know. Do you guys have a Jamie here that pulls things up? But
I
like,
wish.
there was a video that this might have been during pandemic times. And there was somebody who, brought in as like a sample piece of evidence or something, like, which one is the AR? And one was like a black, just straight up like black, like poly shotgun, right? And so they're like, because the other one was an AR, but it had wood furniture on it. It's like, that's the scary one, the one that's all black is like, dog, that's a pump action shotgun, and so it's the premise and the optics of it. And like, and that's where I agree. There is a piece of this that is just, that thing looks scary to me, or I saw that on a movie, or this was in a 90s video game that they were playing shoot up at the arcade, whatever it may be. But yeah, wood furniture.
For the record, I do like the wood furniture. I think it looks good. I do.
Well, there's something classy about it.
It
You have to
is,
admit.
right?
Yeah, it smells like rich mahogany.
Do you remember our both of our former hometown at one point, Columbus?
Yeah.
NBC4 put up a video of this is what an AR-15 does to a watermelon, and they were shooting a watermelon with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And they're like, look at this, look how scary it is.
Yeah.
That's not an AR, that's a shotgun.
Right.
Yeah.
But they bring this fear mongering in.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like this reality that I think is very interesting when it comes to the psychological side of even gun owners, is we kind of get into our own little bubble of, I like this firearm, and as long as this firearm isn't being attacked, I'm good. And I think oftentimes like hunters fall into that category, right? Where it's like, well, they're not going to go after my shotgun. So I'm in the clear. So I don't need to be in the fight because all I do is this my one lane. And it's one of those things where the left is, the anti-gunners are really good at trying to divide us and trying to only go after, one thing or one, class of firearms or whatever it is, because they know that they're probably not going to get all of the gun owners riled up at the same time, because they know that they would lose if every gun owner got into the fight at the same time and said, no, like, you're not doing that. That is unacceptable. That is unconstitutional. And we're going to fight back. And so they cherry pick and they put us together. And so they think, because they're ignorant to firearms, that adding wood furniture changes the type of firearm. And so we're just going to, we're going to divide it out, and then they're not going to worry about it. And it's like,
yeah,
but it's one of those things where we can't be tricked by their marketing to their people to win for their side. We have to be solid.
Well, one of my favorite products that came or led to coming out of Faxon before I left, and then one product that we got to play with but never came to fruition was, because we had this fear in 2020 that they were going to go after ARs. And it was a big fear. I remember we were sitting there, and that's where the bolt guns came from. Originally, was this fear that they were going to go, and what were we going to do as a business?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I'm not going to forget, that was the most fun I've ever had with a gun, that prototype you were working on.
Oh, we've taken it to some shows.
Have you
we can say it. Yeah.
The pump ARAC. That was one of the most fun guns I've ever shot. I loved it because it was different. It was cool.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where innovation came from this fear that tomorrow we could be cut off. The same thing went with the pistol braces. I was gone by the time the pistol brace thing happened, but same thing with the pistol. The pistol braces. And then, we had this worry. And as a manufacturer whose core component is mostly AR parts, how do you pivot with that fear?
Yeah. I mean, bolt action is multifaceted, right? I mean, it's also like it's a cliche, but it's true. Like when you stop innovating, when you stop growing, you start dying. Right. And so there was something there that, as we had done the 8.6 blackout project and there was such a push in bolt action for that. And we felt there was something that we could add to that market. But yes, it ended up having a plus up, right? I mean, the pump ARAC was really for like New Zealand and Canada. ARAC was already on the no-fly list in Canada. And so, but then as time went on, we're like, this might have legs domestically, whether that's a fear thing or whether just because it's different. And you're right, it's pretty satisfying, to pump action 7.62. Like it's pretty dope.
It's a fun gun.
Yeah, it's fun. But
it's a fun gun. When you shoot it, you smile.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had a smile ear to ear.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
No, I was just thinking, I remember actually when that happened, we went to what we called Friday. We went out for a Friday and got with all the sales guys, and they were talking about different things, and came back and we had this concept to build that. And the ARAC is a perfect platform because it's a monolithic upper, so you don't have a handguard and the rigidity of the system. Everything really lent itself to be an easy adaptation to a pump action. As a matter of fact, initially I was going to do everything the same as one except drill the cross hole between the cylinder of the bore and the cylinder of the piston and say there's a center drill there, but if you drill a hole there, you have a semi-automatic. But we didn't do that. We did make the design a pump, but it was a reaction. I think, one of the things is I don't know that focusing on the negative aspect of the problems and the things that we can't really directly impact, right? There's big wheels rolling in certain areas, but if they're large and governmental regulations, et cetera, then our leverage is agility and creativity and innovation. And we have those at our disposal, right? So instead of complaining about the other things, we do what we can. We're here, et cetera. But some of those things we don't have a direct impact on, but the other ones we actually have direct impact within our walls. So what I think is important is focus on the things you can change, right? And have impact on it. So to me, I guess if I think about it, I get frustrated. But when I look at it, it's nothing but another challenge in a puzzle. And it's like, how do we resolve this? How do we get around this? And to me, it's a fun process. So I kind of focus on the positive side of creating the products. And you know what? If things change, we'll change. And we'll be more agile and quicker than any governmental agency. So I would think that we'll continue to be innovative. We'll continue to navigate the landscape. But I don't ever look at it as bleak from a business standpoint. The business will be agile and we'll be creative, and we can do many things. We could even do other industries. I'm not worried about that. When you bring up the question of whether you can or can't, I think the philosophical question of the United States, the Second Amendment, our pedigree and heritage, our freedom, et cetera, those are really the driving things for that. I don't really consider, in the business, I don't worry about a threat in the business. I really don't care. We make bolt actions. They're great to shoot. I love shooting them. I like the accuracy of them. I like the pump action. You smile. We left the recoil spring in it, so it actually goes to battery on an empty mag, and you can release it just like an AR. And it'll go. And when you shoot it, your arm is easier to go this way than it is that way. So shooting the gun is just a pleasant experience. So yeah, I guess the reason you have to do some of these things might be a negative input, but I don't focus on it. I don't focus on it from inside the business. I look at it as another puzzle, another opportunity, another product. And and so we'll find a solution. That's how I look
at
at
the
it.
end of the day, what are you going to do? You going to quit?
Yeah. I mean, if we
you can't quit.
We do what we can.
Yeah.
We vote. We do things like this. We support activities. So it is important. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of control on our product development. And so I don't know. I look at it as a challenge and a positive aspect.
Yeah. And I love what you said. What are we going to do? Quit? No.
Yeah, no.
And that's the way that.
We're no quitters.
No, sir. No, sir. We're not in the business of saying
quitters.
no.
Yeah. And so I love that because, there's a lot of times where a lot of gun owners feel like their back's up against a wall, but we have to talk to ourselves and say, no, we're not quitting, and be vocal in the fight, call your congressman, send an email, and support companies who are innovating to make sure that we have the firearms that we want to have, that we have options, and that we can continue to grow the Second Amendment community. I think a lot of people, when the start of COVID happened, thought, oh my goodness, they're wanting to shut down. A lot of states wanted to shut down and say that there was no what was their phrasing? Essential workers in the Second Amendment. And that was the opposite of what is true. And thankfully gun stores stayed open, and we saw a massive increase in first-time gun ownership. And so, those things are super important as we grow the Second Amendment community, as we grow this coalition, so that we can start restoring our rights, so that those suppressors that you're making are easier to get a hold of and easier to buy. And those things are net positive.
Well, you mentioned that like with the pandemic, one of the biggest things I think that came out of the pandemic and the buying habits, right? You had a lot of people that were sitting on the fence about how they felt about it. They were gun agnostic. You know what I mean? In the right crowd, they're pro, and the right crowd, they're anti. But then it tipped, right? We saw record breaking, for females, minorities, different age groups, right? You'd never seen before. And then you followed up
the 10
with
to 12 group was really booming. True that. It was very strong.
Don't clip that one up. But then like the scope reports come out, and then you see it's like, 3 of the top 5 handguns are like subcompacts, right? Well, what did we do? Well, we've started making aftermarket subcompact barrels. If you would have said in 2013, like, hey, like we should make a barrel for the Ruger LCP or something, it would be like, but why? But then you get the shield barrel and the 43 and 43X and the 365 and the XL, and look at how much those have proliferated over the years, and people got to them, and then they got interested and they wanted to upgrade. They wanted to customize. In the case of our pistol compensators, they wanted to have something that made it a little less snappy, when they shoot.
Snappy, is that a technical term?
Do you have
a snappy meter?
You don't want to mitigate. You want to mitigate your muzzle flip and felt
and it's less
recoil.
snappy.
Hey, that was fun.
Is your snappy meter calibrated?
Dude, I got
to test those. That was fun.
Sorry.
That was a fun week at the office. I got to go out and test those.
Yeah,
comps.
and I mean, and a bunch of engineering goes into it. So, and some of the things too, like for example, like Bob had Muzzlock years ago, right? And it has been like a fine, successful line. You know what also really made it like jump up in the last few years? Suppressors. It's because it's easy to take on and off. You could take it on and off in the field. You could switch from suppressed to unsuppressed. That was not really a key driving point, or the integral barrels you talked about.
And people used to leave a muzzle device on for forever.
Right. And it's like, yeah, it got rid of your pin and weld, needs, but also like the lightweight crowd really started to like it. There are kind of these like little phantom markets. You're like, I did not think that was going to play here, but it plays. And then the same thing's true with like the legislation side. And the other thing, it's not even just national. I mean, obviously, like states like Illinois, states like Washington, states obviously like California. California still gets,
incredible amount of sales.
Bad rap. Oh my gosh! But we have tons of dealers in California and a lot of movement there. I would say the one that was the worst in the last couple of years was Illinois. I mean, that was rough. That was very rough. And then we have to cut off direct to consumer customers in those states because the liability is way too high, because it's kind of purposefully vague in the statement. So like anything that goes on an AR-15, I was like, well, we sell magazine marker bands. Is that how many degrees
Rubber
of
band
separation?
could put your eyes out. You gotta be careful with that.
How far does that go? Yeah.
But I want to go back to something because I can see kind of a fork in the road, right? When you look at the Second Amendment or when you look at preserving gun rights, you can take a very specific approach and take direct actions in those issues, which people need to do. So thank you. It needs to be done. There's another approach. And if you look at our website or you look at our marketing, it's the Fellowship of Firearms. Now, you know, we can go toe to toe and argue the issues, and we need to do that to challenge people who want to take rights away. I agree with that 100%. But at the same time, I think there's tremendous benefit for companies like ours to pursue the Fellowship of Firearms, right? What we make is as lethal as anyone else does. But what we look at and what we've always considered in our products, firearms have a personality and a memory and a fellowship aspect where, you know, I went hunting with my grandfather. This was my grandfather's gun. I bought my son his first gun when he was, I won't say 8, but right, there's so many things that memories are tied to. They went hunting, they went shooting. I used to go to the farm with my uncle. I used to go, and what I think needs to be really championed and really reemphasized is, why did people have the affection for firearms initially, right? Then it becomes political and they want to take it away, so we have to go there and keep it. And this becomes this front, right? And it really, the real substance behind it is education and having more people experience using a firearm, a positive experience. I tell you, I've taken everybody from, you know, youth to grandmothers that were 80 to 90 years old. And the one thing you see when a lot of people shoot a firearm for the first time is they turn and they smile, right? They get a smile on their face. And I've seen it way more than not. And it's that feeling that they get from doing it, and it takes away the mystique and the negative aspects of it in most cases. So when I look at the people that we get to be involved in our sport, in our activity, and look, there can be zombie day, there can all kinds of things with guns. I get all that. But the reality of it is most bullets are fired by firearms in fellowship with other people. I took my son. I went with my brother. My dad took me. When you think about that, I think that's an incredibly strong emotion that's going to make people pro Second Amendment. Not necessarily the front of the argument, right? Because that's important. But the fundamental wave of people who say, I've done that. I enjoyed that. I don't know why you're telling me this. I've shot a gun. All people that shoot guns aren't bad. The more people we can get involved in our sport and our activity and to use the firearms in the constructive manner that they're meant to be, they'll get an emotional wave. And I think when you look at it, you want people to have the drive to preserve it on their own, not just to be told that it's important. So when you think of Fellowship of Firearms and you think of the massive number of people, all the new shooters, all the different groups who have been new gun owners, right? And some of them are for security because of the way the times are getting. I certainly respect that. But a lot of them are, they didn't understand. I mean, we don't make shotguns, but shotguns are fun for shooting sporting clays and skeet and trap. We've done events with our church at shooting ranges. Boy Scouts. To me, to focus on the single facet of good and evil is really not covering the topic. It is a way of a society. It is a component of a freedom. It's an act that we get to do. Do we want to take away water skiing because people might break their leg? No, it's something people enjoy doing, right? And I think we need to paint firearm ownership as, obviously, it's a responsibility. Certainly is a right. That's in writing. But it also is something people can enjoy. And without a lot of drama, just say, yeah, I'm a gun owner.
Yeah.
I enjoy owning firearms.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's so important that you make a positive experience for people with firearms, especially when you take them out for the first time. It is one of, I know we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast, it's one of the best ways to change someone's mind is to at least show them what they're arguing against, right? And you'd be amazed at how you can take someone who may be hostile towards the Second Amendment and change them in an hour and a half's time.
And now they're an advocate. You know what I love to take when if I'll take some people that I think are being nervous shooting, or maybe they're, you know, different types of people that I think aren't going to just jump right into a 308, right? 22 suppressed.
Oh yeah.
Just start with a 22 suppressed and safely teach them about the firearms and let them pull a trigger. And then what I do is I'll take everything all the way up to a 308 or a 5.56 or something. And suppressed helps tremendously on that first.
Eagle.
That surreal environment, right?
Eagle.
Yeah, 50. But then what's interesting is I like to take people like that and say, okay, now would you like to try something else? Try a 380 or a 9mm or something. And most of the time it's amazing. Yeah. And I've walked people from 22 suppressed to an ARAC 7.62, and they're dumping mags within 30 minutes, right? And they're doing it safely. We've got oversight for them. We're doing instruction for them. They're in a safe environment to do it. And by the time they went from that 22 spray, set that down, and they're shooting at 7.62, they're dumping mags and having a ball. That's how I think we make this stick. Bring people back to why these firearms are so fun and what you can do with them.
Yeah, some of the most fun times I've had was when we went up to the Faxon farm up to Barry's place and shot as a team. And that was, we goofed, we had fun, we tested stuff, we worked. Bob, I promise we worked. I promise.
For a moment.
So for a moment. Working. But no, I had so much fun. And that's the big thing. You guys strive for this fellowship, the ARs, when they were first launched, it was the first line to kind of push off that first rifle for people. I couldn't have said it better, Bob. You hit the nail on the head there. But we are getting the wrap up sign. We could go for another hour, but Kailey, why don't you go ahead?
Stick around for the director's cut.
Oh God, not with you.
The extras with French subtitles. All right, Kara.
Great. Here we go. If you can't tell, we used to work together for a very long time.
Yes, I feel like the odd man out, but that's all
so
good.
sorry,
It's all good. So where can everyone find you? Social media, all of the stuff, plug away.
Yeah, everything's at Faxon Firearms, faxonfirearms.com. You can find us on all the major platforms. On X, we are at Faxon_firearms, but generally a good Google search, you'll get what you'll need. It'll be us, Faxon Machining, and Brad Faxon, the golfer. So there's really only a few options.
That's not you? I thought that was your alter ego.
Certainly not the golfer. But if you hit it in the air, I'll shoot at it.
I believe that.
And you can find us at Goals this year. Yeah.
Well, before we go, I have a gift for both of you. This is from AAC and Palmetto State Armory. They've sponsored our gifts for our guests for this. So you'll be receiving this after the show, a gift from Palmetto State Armory and AAC Ammo as a thank you for being on with us. Awesome. Really appreciate them doing that. Like Dustin said, because he's the ultimate plug man.
Plug man. That's what they say.
Yep.
I do hair transplants on the side too.
That's what I've heard the rumors. It's true now.
The plug man. Carry on.
Check us out at Goals August 9th and 10th in Knoxville, Tennessee. Faxon will be there. They've got their beautiful booth right up front. They'll be one of the first people when you walk in. So go over there, get yourself a barrel and upper, hug Bob. I don't know if he likes that or not, but
see the new cans. It'll be good stuff.
Cans.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And again, Knoxville, Tennessee, August 9th and 10th for Goals. We will see you in Knoxville.